Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. And let's talk about the books I read in April because I actually read quite a few books and it's quite surprising because this was my most stressful month of 2019 so far. So it's also that time of the semester, it's the end of the semester, so things pile up. But the first couple of books that I read were a bit of disappointments for me. The first book I read was The Wicked Will Rise by Danielle Paige. It's book number 2 in the Dorothy Must Die series. And Dorothy Must Die was one of the first books for fun that I picked up after I finished my PhD. And so I had a sentimental attachment to it, and I had at the time bought the audiobook for The Wicked Will Rise, and it had just been sitting in my phone for so long that in April I decided to finally pick it up. I was just looking for something to listen to on audio, and so I did, and it was disappointing. It shouldn't have been because I think it's very much in line with what the first book was. I think that if you like the first book, the second one is quite satisfying. But I think at this point I have kind of outgrown the Dorothy Must Die series, and I will not continue reading it. So I'm basically DNFing the series. I did finish the audiobook for The Wicked Will Rise, but yeah, it's just not for me. Not for me right now. The second book that I read in April was The Gilded Whoops by Roshani Chokshi. And this is the first one of her books that I've ever read, and I picked it up because it's set in 19th century Paris, and during the time of the World's Fair, and it follows a very diverse cast, and I've heard really good things about the author. I love Paris. That's actually my area of expertise, is French history, so I thought this was just going to be like the perfect thing to read during a stressful month. And it kind of was not. And some of it might have been my mood. I'm very much a mood reader, and I didn't know enough about the story. There's definitely an audience for it. I don't think it's a terrible book by any means. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I did think that one of the things that she captured really well about 19th century Paris was, 1, how diverse it was, and 2, the racial dynamics that were not, there's a lot of complexity in the racial dynamics in Paris at this time, a lot of racism, but also a lot of mixed race individuals who have been finding a place in Paris, and that aspect I really I think what didn't work for me was the heist story, because I didn't connect to all of the characters in the story. I didn't connect to their motivations. Some of them I really loved. I really loved. I really connected with a couple of them, but not all of them. And the chapters are told from various perspectives, and so for large chunks of time I'm reading something from the perspective of somebody that I am just not connecting with, and that included the main character. So that was not very enjoyable for me. But like I said, I think there is an audience for it, and I think if the story interests you, I think I would never say not pick it up if that story interests you. I think that it is a good one. All right, the next book that I listened to in April was actually Nevermoor, The Trials of Morrigan Crowe by Jessica Townsend. This was a fantastic story. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. It's a middle grade book, and it's the story of a girl who lives in a world in which she is on a list of cursed children. They in this community, they think that these children are cursed and that they bring bad luck. Her father is a wealthy politician, and so every month they have a meeting with the Office of Cursed Children, and he has to basically make reparations for the bad luck that she has inflicted on other people. Not only that, but there's a date in which all the cursed children are set to die. Yeah, and they don't know how, or it's never explained how the deaths will occur or anything, just you're gonna die on this date. This is when the date is likely to happen, but there's a bit of a gray area. The date might or might not happen at that point. And then as the story, very early in the story, it becomes clear that the date of when all these children are going to die has arrived. Our main character, Morrigan Crowe, does not die. Fun ensues. She discovers a world of magic, and it's already a magical world, but she discovered another layer of it as she attempts to enter a school for gifted children. Essentially, she's been sponsored for entrance into this school, but there are trials that need to occur in order for her to actually enter the school. So we see her go through the trials. It was so freaking adorable, cute. I laughed out loud at several points during this story, and it's very rare that I literally laugh out loud in the middle of listening to a book, and I did with this one. And so I think I'm gonna buy it in the hard copy of this so that I can have it in my shelf, but I do want to listen to the second one, which recently came out as well, so I think I'm gonna pick that up in May. But yeah, highly, highly recommended. I don't typically read middle grade, and I just found this story freaking adorable. Loved it. Totally cleansed my palate. I cannot say enough good things about Nevermoor. But the next book that I picked up was a nonfiction book. It's Bad Blood, The Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup by John Carreyrou. I listened to this on audiobook as well, and it was my book club book for my in-person book club. And man, okay, so just a warning that if you're not in the right mood for this book, it might be a little bit of an issue, because it was depressing. A little bit, because if you don't know anything about the story, this is the story Theranos. So it's the company Theranos and the CEO, Elizabeth Holmes. I had not heard about the story when it came out. My boyfriend had, so he was actually really interested while I was reading this book and hearing my thoughts on it, because it was all over the news. There was a podcast, there's an HBO documentary, tons of information on this. But the company basically was selling a technology that for blood testing, where you didn't have to go get vials of blood drawn in order to get tested for different diseases. Instead, they promised that all it took was them pricking a drop of blood from your finger, and that was all they needed to test for basically anything you wanted. And it turns out they never had this technology. This company was in business for something like 9+ years. For years, they had investors that included the wealthiest Americans, and it a lot of it seems to be people just really wanted this technology to exist, and believed in the founder. She sold her company really well, and a lot of these people weren't experts, so they she's able to bluff herself into becoming a millionaire, and then jugging this company along. It's a really interesting story. I think it's told very well, the way the narrative is woven. I think Carreyrou did a really good job with that. I have to say, though, that I did sense a bit of sexism on his part. He always calls her, he always emphasizes how young she is, which is something noteworthy. She was 19 when she founded this company, but he's always emphasizing that she's blonde, blue-eyed, mesmerizing eyes. And I get that that's how some of the men she's selling this company, her technology to, are perceiving. It's part of her charisma, but I think he was emphasizing it a little too much. But anyways, I still gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I think the story is really interesting. It really captures your attention. It was just, man, it's really depressing. The world of rich people is a totally foreign world to me, and if you have the right enough money, if you have the right connections, I don't even know, it's just so foreign. And also that technology is needed. Like an easier way of testing and getting blood from patients is severely needed. And I hope other people are working on it. People with some, legit skill. But yes, so Bad Blood, I think it's an excellent story. Really interesting. If you have not heard anything about it, you will find yourself like going online and researching more information on it, because it is quite a compelling story. The next book that I read in April is Imitation in Death by J.D. Robb, and this is I forgot which number it is. It's one of the in-depth series. I'm making my way through the in-depth series. I really enjoyed that one. I have not come across a book in that series that I don't enjoy. So I am continuing to read those. I also read Portrait in Death in April, another excellent one. I don't give these ratings anymore because it is my comfort food reading. I read them before bed, and it's just, I'm continuing to have a good experience with the in-depth series so far. The next book that I read, I did a dedicated review for. It is Can't Escape Love by Alyssa Cole. This is a novella in the Reluctant Royals series, and it's just fantastic. So it follows Reggie, who is, you see her in the other two, in the other books in the the Reluctant Royal series, but she runs this like geek website called, Girls with Glasses. And so this little book, this little novella is just so fantastic because it's a little love note to geek culture and geekdom. I caught some references from some of the communities that I belong to, like Doctor Who and all that, but I'm sure I missed others. I know there's little odes here to like Japanese geekdoms and things like that, to escape rooms. It's just really cute story. I really enjoyed it, and I am excited to pick up the next book in the series, which just came out. All right, next up, what did I read? Oh, next up, I listened to The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. And I am giving it, what did I give it? I gave it 3 out of 5 stars because I can see why people really like this book. I finished it, but my level of enjoyment of it was limited. It is a fantasy. You're following Alice, whose mother has been kidnapped, and she makes a friend who's going to help her on her quest to go find her mother from this fantastical world. And in the process, she is discovering this world of fantasy and magic, and kind of discovering things about herself and about her family that she didn't know. And I felt like it took too long to get to the magical world. Like this whole quest is basically to get to this other world. And for like 3/4 of the book, you are in our world, and she's not figuring out enough of the story, right? Like there were just chunks and chunks of the story I felt like that could have been cut from the first part, and like this world of magic is actually really interesting, but there wasn't quite enough of it in there. But it is an attempt of, or it is a twist on myths and magical stories, and it really focusing on kind of the dark elements of that. So I totally see why people love it. That's why I'm giving it 3 stars, but it was just, it didn't do it for me. I think that's what it comes down to. Another book that I read in April is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. And I have to say, I now see why a lot of people enjoy reading Christina Lauren. So it's a writing duo. I did meet them recently at the Rip to Bodice, and this one is signed. Is it signed? Yes. I should brag that I've got a signed copy of it. It's really cute. It follows Hazel and Josh. Hazel is a school teacher. She's unique. She's got her own personality and she doesn't fit the mold. And Josh is like kind of a much more like by the book kind of guy. He follows the rules. He isn't do weird creative stuff, and they just make a great coupling. But they have decided when the story starts to just be friends, and so it is a friends to lovers story. It's really cute. They decide to like go on double dates, in which they each set the other person up with somebody they know, and it's through that dating that they begin to realize it's not a spoiler, it's a romance novel, that they belong together. It was very stinking cute story. I really enjoyed it. I think I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars, primarily because I didn't like the very, very end. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I did not like the very, very last twist. That's all I'll say. The last book that I read in April was Neil deGrasse Tyson's Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. I have to note that Neil deGrasse Tyson has been accused of sexual assault. You can go look that up on your own. I'm not going to be talking about that in here. It is a very short read. I listened to it in an audiobook, and I think at the speed I was reading it, it was just over 3 hours. It's a good book. Neil deGrasse Tyson is very good at translating science to the public audience, right, in a way that's very accessible and meaningful, and he does that here. So if you're interested in it and the accusations don't bother you, then I would say totally go for it, read it. It begins with the beginning of the universe, right? He takes us through those first steps in the history of the universe that took billions of years to occur, but without which we wouldn't even exist, right? Like, for me, one of the key points in the history of the universe is stars, and the way they burn through elements in order to create new ones. Like at the very beginning of the universe, you have hydrogen and helium. And so that's not enough ingredients to make our planet. It's just not very complex. But through the process of how stars burn those elements, we get carbon. And carbon is the key to the universe. And then the star will burn through carbon, and it will give us more chemicals until eventually you get a supernova, and that is the last stage of how we get all the elements in the universe. And he tells a story in a really entertaining, like in a really engrossing way that, even if all you had was high school science, you don't get lost, I don't think, in here. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I feel like this story is actually better told. Like, this is a good version of the story of the universe and the importance of science in the modern world. But I think this is actually a story that Big History tells even better. And I teach a class on Big History, which is telling the history of the universe from the Big Bang to today and into the future, right? And I think that the scholars that do Big History actually do a really fantastic job at it. They just don't have the celebrity that Neil deGrasse Tyson does. So I'm going to do, my next video is going to be a dedicated video talking about kind of this science, the history of the universe, and other books that deal with the history of the universe, for those of you that are interested. So like, not just astrophysics, but the way Big History really deals with merging all of the disciplines. So astrophysics, geology, astronomy, biology, history, merging everything to really tell a complete story of the universe in a way that's very accessible. And I have a bunch of recommendations if you're interested in this topic. So I think if you liked this book, I have a bunch of books that I think you will like. If you want to avoid Neil deGrasse Tyson, I have a bunch of books that I think are actually better than this one. So watch out for that. And for now, those are all the books that I read in April. It was a pretty good reading month. It started off a little shaky, but I think I did a pretty good job with a lot of these stories. Found some really great books I loved, and others that are now done. So let me know if you've read any of these books. and what you thought of them. It's always okay. I'm like, it's totally okay to have differing opinions on these books. That's the whole point, I think, of sharing our opinion and having these discussions with other book lovers. So let me know down below. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.